Hello, hello, hello. This is the Resident Skeptics, brought to you by Jordan and Connor, and also brought to you by our quarter-life crisis. We are desperate for your attention, so please follow us on Spotify, listen to us on Spotify, comment on our stuff, because we need your attention to validate ourselves. Connor, good to be here with you today.
Good to be back, Jordan.
Yeah. Well, this should be fun. There's been so much in the news cycle this week that we kind of picked out some of the things that we thought were interesting, most important, all that stuff. So,
yeah, not widely covered. There was a few that I feel like kind of just skated by, and we didn't hear too much about it.
Yeah. Well, there's like only so much you can keep up with. We can't keep up with every single thing that happens, but I felt like there was some stuff that we could definitely cover, some stuff that's really prevalent in the news, but also some things that are kind of more, small and under the radar, but I think have big implications. And so I think we're going to get to that in a little bit.
Yep, I agree. And for people that are tuning in, we're probably going to largely be doing news coverage over the weeks as we study up for more intense segments, such as the Confederate Articles, if I'm saying that right.
The Federalist Papers. Yes.
I did look up something and I was like, this is not what Jordan was talking about, because I keep thinking that.
Well, I thought the Confederate Articles, those were what we had before the Constitution, right? They put that together.
I believe so.
And they got together and they're like, wow, this is really bad. We need to change this. So I think you were close, but not quite there.
Yeah, no, not quite there. But something like that will be a more intense and kind of like a special edition podcast. Weekly, we will probably be looking to just cover whatever the cultural and news events are in America, maybe global, if something significant takes place. Australia has some interesting things going on there. So I would
Really? Are you sure?
Yeah, they do. I would love to do a segment on that at some point. And maybe I'll see if I can prep for that.
And I thought Australia was so cool.
I
thought
really
they were
wanted
cool.
to go, and now I don't.
I never want to go. I never want to go to Australia. They also have like lots of spiders, I've heard, and I'm not ready for that.
They do, but it's just kind of normal down there. New Zealand was on my bucket list too, and now it's not. They have one positive COVID case, and the entire country locks down again.
It's insanity. It's absolute insanity.
Yeah, and people talking about this maybe not being a pandemic, but being an endemic, so it's just going to keep going, and then is this how we're just going to keep living?
Oh, I was watching something by Megyn Kelly. She was talking to two doctors about the difference between that. It's a really good clip. I wish I could find it right now, but it's a video clip. Really good, and so actually had some different views that I wasn't prepared for, which I actually kind of agreed with. I was like, oh, that's an interesting view. She didn't like lean conservative or Democrat. I think she's kind of like somewhere in the middle in regards to coronavirus. Not Megyn Kelly, but the expert that she had. And for the life of me, I can't remember what her name was. But speaking of things that are confusing and that we can't remember and can't keep straight, did you like that? Did you like that little segue?
It's a good segue.
I'm going to get better at those as time goes on. We would be very silly to not cover a little bit of the disaster that is the Afghanistan collapse. I mean, and in case anyone is not aware, and if you're not aware, you should be aware, but in case you're not aware of what happened in Afghanistan, Biden decided it would be a great idea to just pull troops out before citizens, leave a bunch of our weapons. Like, this is the very pared down version, by the way. And most of the sources you're going to find on this are going to confirm pretty much exactly what I'm saying. He pulls out the troops, then he keeps the weapons there. It was somewhere in the billions for how much tactical gear we left to the Taliban.
Yep.
And pretty much in a matter of days, the Taliban takes over. They take over Kabul and does exactly what Biden said wasn't going to happen. So everything that happens is what Biden said wouldn't happen. And so Biden just, I don't think it's an either or situation. I think he's both incompetent and also deceiving himself. I don't know what's going on. It's very, very complicated. Because it's so complicated, we had some Senate hearings this week from General Mark Milley and General Mackenzie. I think there was also another person that was a part of that. I think Austin was as well. Obviously, I feel like this is pretty much headed up by the GOP because they're much more interested in this than the Democrats might be. Do you think that's accurate, Connor?
Yeah, I would say the Democrats are largely not interested in a failure by the Biden administration
being covered in a Senate hearing.
No, they're just ignoring it. I mean, if we want to talk about even just the border stuff that we kind of covered just a little bit of last year, like we heard nonstop border from 2016 to 2020 while Trump was president. And now it's worse than ever. More migrants have crossed the border illegally in the, 9 months? 10?
Yeah.
Well, we kind of just got, 9 months. 9 months that Biden has been president than all 4 years of Trump. And I believe his deportation numbers are really high as well.
Yeah.
But and for a country that's locking down and pushing vaccination so hard, they're not requiring any vaccination at the border and just letting people in. So just from a consistency standpoint, and while I'm not really for or against this vaccine, if you want to get it, I find it odd that they're putting all these mandates in place and then exempting 60,000 plus people that just keep coming over. I don't understand.
It's almost like the illegal immigrants have more freedom than we do in the United States. That's what it kind of feels like as they're entering in. They don't have to get vaccinated. They're just allowed to just, as far as I know, they're allowed to just cross, except for when Border Control is trying to stop some of the Haitian migrants.
But we do have a little bit more on the whipping.
Whipping, put that in quotation marks, why don't you?
There are some
verbal quotation marks.
There's quotation marks there. But we'll come back to that. Let's jump back into Afghanistan and what is going on with General Mark Milley.
So a little resource for you guys, because I was doing some research on these Senate hearings, and you can go, you can literally put into Google and look up Senate committee hearings, and you can actually read the statements that they put out. So and I wouldn't recommend watching all of these Senate hearings. I mean, that is a big waste of your life. Don't do that. Forbes, I want to say, let me make sure that I have the right place. Yeah, so Forbes Breaking News, they do some good quick segments of interviews and Senate committee hearings that you can take a look at yourself, and they have some good resources there, but also you can find on the government's website, which, by the way, very outdated. It looks like a 14-year-old made it. But anyway, they do have the statement from Mark Milley in one of these Senate hearings, which is about 10 pages long. So if you're like, I don't trust small segments of information, Jordan, I'll be like, okay, that's fine. You can go literally read his statement, and that should help you understand. But
get all the context you need.
Yeah, and that's what I want to make a point about too, is that all I had to do was do a quick Google search. When we talk about research, it doesn't take too much work. It doesn't take as much work as you think. It's as easy as opening up your Instagram and seeing a zinger quote from your favorite politician or celebrity. It's quite easy. So go ahead and do that if you want to. You don't have to. I wouldn't recommend reading all of these statements, and we're going to kind of try to sum them up today. But if you don't take our word for it, go look it up for yourself. Was that fair, Connor?
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. And I'm considering a project when we have the website, once the website's up, to be posting links for each podcast from the sources that we've used. So if people want to come and double check us, although I definitely recommend you look for yourself, but I understand some people are really busy. You've got full-time job, you've got kids, you've got volunteering, you've got to drive everywhere. Everybody's life circumstance is different, so not everybody can devote so much time to
like us
research. Because
we're having a crisis.
And apparently we have a lot of time on our hands.
Oh yes, so much time. That's actually sarcastic.
There's a lot of sarcasm there for sure.
Yeah, we could tell everyone that we're doing this podcast at 3 a.m. in the morning because we don't have any time to do it anytime else. Which isn't true, by the way. We're doing this in an afternoon, so no worries, guys. Don't worry about our health. It's okay. Okay, back to all these Senate hearings. Here's what you need to know. everyone's pointing fingers at the other person. All right. So Joe Biden, he made a statement. And Tom Cotton, I'm going to kind of quote him here. And he said, Joe Biden has made a statement that it was an unanimous recommendation of the Joint Chiefs that we not maintain a military presence beyond August 31st. We've heard testimony to that effect today as well. When was that unanimous recommendation sought and presented to the president? Okay, so Joe Biden, if anyone remembers this clip, Joe Biden's like, yes, we all totes agreed on this, which is a more millennial paraphrasing. And so General McKenzie, as far as I can tell, does not agree with this situation. He testified. So, Connor, I actually have it up for you to look at there. And one of the sources that I'm pulling from is the Daily Wire. And now you might be thinking, Jordan, the Daily Wire is super conservative. The answer to that question or that statement is yes, they are. Mm-hmm. But here's what I like about what they do in journalism. And I took some journalism in college because I had to for my public relations degree. They do a very good job with their, I think it's the inverted pyramid. Is it the inverted pyramid? You wouldn't know. It's fine.
Nope.
But they do a good job with their journalism, but they also pull from every kind of source that can range from a more liberal source to a more conservative source. So they quote directly from there. So you can find those things for yourself as well if you want to go to their original article. But here we go. I'm going to go ahead and just quote from Daily Wire's article regarding General McKenzie's statement. United States Military Central Command Commander General Kenneth McKenzie told Congress Tuesday that he warned President Joe Biden that Afghanistan could collapse and recommended leaving a small force of 2,500 peacekeeping troops in country, contradicting Biden's claims that he was never informed Kabul could fall quickly. Connor, on a scale of 1 to 10, how shocking is that to you? I mean, could we have ever have seen this happening? Could we have seen this coming? Like, honestly, I didn't. I didn't
Absolutely not. There's no way anybody could have known that it would just fall within a day.
But how would we have known? I mean, gosh. Like, and here's the thing that's so frustrating to me about this, is that you and I are both just laymen. We're both just living our normal citizen lives. We could have seen this coming. Mm-hmm. We did see this coming. Mm-hmm. It's like everyone saw this coming, and then we have top military leadership being like, well, at least Biden is like, well, I didn't see this coming. I didn't know, no. And it's like, well, these generals clearly saw it coming. It's almost, the level of incompetence is almost like incomprehensible how this happened. Like, I can't figure out how it happened.
I don't know. I was worried about it when I heard that Trump wanted to do it, but it sounded like they had a plan, and it was not to evacuate the soldiers first, by the way. It was citizens first, and I don't believe they were supposed to be leaving military equipment. It was not so rushed. But then Biden went and pushed it back and changed it around, and it's not just purely Biden, but it's his advisors as well that are screwing with this.
And that's what I genuinely don't know, is who's advising this? Like, is this Biden, or is this someone else that's pulling the strings? Because let's not forget, and I never want this to be forgotten. I'll never forget this for the rest of my life. That Biden's move, whatever his administration did, was so incompetent that it costed us the lives of our servicemen. It costed the lives of Afghanistan. Mm-hmm. And also is costing the lives of the Americans that we left in Afghanistan. Let no one ever forget that, because Biden is trying to move the news cycle along. All right, we're trying to focus on other things, but I will never forget, and I'll remind everyone occasionally, that our own citizens, our fellow Americans, are stuck there.
Yeah.
And our allies, because of Biden.
Yep. And you have private citizens that are wealthy having their own planes or paying for planes to go out and pick people up. You have ex-military that are going out against government orders to go and extract
Which is super dope, by the way.
That
was insane.
There's not many things cooler than that.
Oh, Connor, tell them a little bit about that, like really quickly, about about them going into Afghanistan. Like there was like were there ex-Marines that went in?
I think there was several different divisions, but yeah, ex-Marines, they got a hold of a plane and literally just went there, which was against, because American citizens are not supposed to be over there, and because they are ex-military, I believe they're now considered citizens, so they're not supposed to be over there whatsoever as far as American government ordinances are concerned, and they went and did it anyways. That's just phenomenal. I can't, you're just like in the face of the American government, who you used to work for, by the way. And you're just like, I'm ignoring you. I'm going to go anyways.
Right. And I think it was called Pineapple Express for anyone listening at home.
Really?
I think so. Yeah. I think it's like Banana Express or Pineapple Express. I was reading an article about it a few weeks ago. And it was just pretty dope. And they're just going in there and they're doing what, your government fails to do. These are people that genuinely love their country. And I think some people see that as an issue now, to love your country. And I don't understand why, because I love America and the opportunities it's afforded me, especially as a woman that I don't know if I'd be able to get in, a place like Afghanistan.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm very grateful for our country and what it's been able to give me. That's just how I feel.
No, that's totally fair. There's been a lot of opportunities, and it's not to say that it is perfect by any stretch of the imagination.
Of course not. It's full of humans.
If it was perfect, we wouldn't be sitting here talking about all of these things.
Right. We're talking about one of our U.S. generals, General Mackenzie and Mark Milley, who I don't
really know what's going on there.
I don't know. And that's the thing with Tom Cotton. Anyone who doesn't know who Tom Cotton is, he is a Republican from Arkansas. He was questioning Milley on this. And he was like, when was the unanimous decision sought and presented to the president? That is a direct quote from the clip from the Senate hearing. And Milley said on the 25th of August, I was asked to make an assessment and provide the best military advice. And so Tom was kind of upset about this because, if you guys remember, Kabul fell on August 15th. So why was it on August 25th? Why then was Milley asked about what to do 10 days after Kabul fell? 10 days. That's a long time, especially if you're in a crisis. That is a crisis situation, to wait 10 days to ask your top military advisors about this. Because Mark Milley isn't on the bottom of the... Yeah, it's a little bit late. It's like when you're trying to meet your friend for lunch at 12 and they come at 9 p.m. instead. That's what this is. It's almost outrageous. It's outrageous. You'd be enraged. It's horrible. And so that's what really bothers me, is that I don't think anyone's giving a great answer to what's happening. Biden's pointing the fingers at, Milley and Mackenzie, and then Mackenzie and Milley are kind of pointing the fingers at Biden, and I'm not sure what to think. It was so confusing for me, even to listen to some of the Senate hearings, even though it should have been pretty straightforward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I have not been able to sit down and listen to the Senate hearings.
I wouldn't recommend listening to them all, because it's just a waste of your time.
You think reading would be better for people? Just because you could kind of pick out different parts of it quicker.
Sure. I think that from what I could see from the website, you can see their statements. I don't know if I couldn't find like a full-on transcript. And I'm sure that transcript is out there because I saw that they had some transcripts. I just don't know if they have it for these ones yet. But what works with these clips is I'd say they're about 5 to 10 minutes long. And they're all pretty much in context because Tom Cotton is asking these direct questions, right? So you're not missing the context. There's the question, there's the answer. You're not missing too much, and they set up the question. Because if you heard me reading about what Tom Cotton said, he made the statement of, hey, Joe Biden said this was unanimous recommendation. And then he asked the question, when was this recommendation sought, right? Mm-hmm. And then you get the context of them answering the question. And I read an exact quote from Milley saying, on 25th of August, I was asked to make an assessment and provide the best military advice, yada, yada, yada. So I feel like you could watch those clips and they would give you a pretty good idea of what you're looking at. Because I don't think, we're not idiots. Like, if anyone's been paying attention of what's going on in the world, you can put 2 and 2 together and hopefully know some of the context. But if you feel like you're lacking that context, maybe you do want to read Millie's full statement, or maybe you do want to go to a trusted news source and look at some articles from a month ago regarding Afghanistan and see what was going on. If you lived under a rock, of course. If you lived under a rock. But maybe, you know, honestly, you were right. Like, some of us have busy lives and...
Yep, especially because it's really hard. Like, we're using Daily Mail. I've got liberal and conservative publications all open on my screen because we know that they're going to lean one way or the other. They might frame some things, or they might neglect to report something, or they might talk about it in a different way. And I find myself reading between the lines with a lot of them, where it's just like, all right, yeah, I'm going to pull CNN's take and Fox's take on this. I'm going to look at it and go, all right, CNN makes a good point here, and I can see their perspective, and I don't think it's invalid. But also, here's Fox's side of it. And it's sad that we have to, like, pull sources from so many different places to try and figure out what's actually happening.
Right, because that's the issue with journalism now, is that it's not journalism, it's just opinion writing, and we coming to the point where they're making up facts, and that's, you know, what CNN...
Or redefining facts. I sent you that social media thing, what was it, a couple days ago on Messenger, where it was talking about we just kind of need to do away with this.
Yeah, that we need to do away with facts so that we can prioritize emotions. Yes. As that was kind of my general take from that.
Was that on Messenger, or was that on Instagram that I sent it to you?
I think it was on Facebook, actually.
Those headlines. Oh, here we go.
Yeah, I think you sent it to me over Facebook.
This is fun. From Slate, it's time to give up on the facts, or at least to temporarily lay them down in favor of a more useful weapon, emotions.
But Connor, you got to give them this. At least they're being honest. Right?
They are being honest.
At least they're being honest. Like, I've been trying to say forever now that people are prioritizing emotions. I've been trying to say that for a while, but no one listens to me because they take it's called lived experience. Like, you take your lived experience as fact, when it could very well, I believe that their lived experience, for the most part, is, what's the word I'm looking for?
Minimal?
No. I'm not saying it's necessarily valid, but I believe their experience. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it represents the general.
Oh, anecdotal.
Yeah. So your specific situation does not sum up the general situation, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. No, that's yeah. It comes down to people having an experience and then blanketing across everybody else's experiences, and they're all different and complicated. And it's not just one thing that results in a certain turnout. There's multiple events.
Right. No, absolutely. Like, I think that you can take, I don't know why racism is always the example, but it's kind of saying that, well, if someone has like a racist incident with someone, which, by the way, that happens still, right? Because we talked about last time that true racism exists.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one specific situation that could happen to multiple people. That doesn't necessarily make it a general situation. And the general situation that I'm talking about is trying to prove systemic racism. There are individuals who are racist, but we don't really have much proof of institutional racism across the board. So it's trying
that exists today.
Yes. Because we obviously know that it did at one point. Jim Crow, hello, you know, everyone's talked about it, so we're not going to talk about it. But Jim Crow was a thing, and that was definitely, in my opinion, at least that was institutional. But nowadays, I'm hard-pressed to find an example of an institution being racist. And the closest example that I can find of an institution being racist is higher education discrimination against Asians and Asian Americans.
Yes.
That is the closest I can find. And it doesn't really have anything to do with the black population in America. So we have to be careful that we can't just say that our experience applies to everybody else and that everyone else needs to bend the knee to our experience and cater to our individual sensitivities all the time.
Mm-hmm.
It just doesn't make sense. And not only does it not make sense, but then everyone's walking on eggshells around you constantly.
Yeah, I mean...
You can't say anything anymore. You literally can't say anything anymore without.
No, and then you become afraid of saying something. You're always like, I totally believe in watching your language, and you're not trying to offend people or hurt them, but the fact that somebody might say something on an accident or because they're ignorant, and ignorance not a bad thing. It's just you don't know. You and I have talked about this a lot, and we know that the Asian countries are probably some of the more racist ones that are out there, but it's born out of ignorance, not really malintent so much as they have their cultures and their people have largely stayed the same for thousands of years. America is a really weird and an abnormal melting pot where everybody looks different or is made up of multiple different ethnicities.
Mm-hmm. Hello, that's me.
That's me too. It's like people are like, what are you? I'm a mutt.
I am a mutt.
I'm not half of anything. Irish, Scottish, Hispanic, which is basically Spanish and Native American, and it just goes down the list from there. So I don't have an identity group. I don't have a like an ethnic culture or anything that's been passed down to me. Is everything's just kind of been lost along the way. Partially because there's just so many different things. It's like I guess my ancestors just didn't keep up with it. I don't really know where it all ended.
I mean, who knows? And you're absolutely right. You know, all of our experiences are going to be a little bit different, and our ethnic makeup is going to be different. I was just always hoping that what would happen is that we would consider ourselves American. Mm-hmm. I consider myself American. I'd consider myself American Asian, because unlike you, I'm not a mutt. I'm half Asian,
mm-hmm.
half Caucasian, with much like Elizabeth Warren, a dash of Native American. You like that?
I've got more Native American. She went and got free school. I didn't get free school.
I feel like Elizabeth and Warren and we would get along just because of our ethnic background. You know what I'm saying?
It's such a strong bond.
I know. We're both one drop of Native American.
I don't think she qualified for one drop. I don't remember exactly what it was.
Is she like 1/16th of 1/16th of a half of 1/16th? Is that the correct math? I'm not sure. I don't even remember.
Okay, I'm gonna look it up because I have to know.
Have to know how much Native American she is.
Excuse my keyboard. I need to get a quieter one for these podcasts. This one is for gaming.
Yeah, that thing sounds like a hammer.
It sounds. I love the sound of it. I really do love the sound of it, but it's not very good for podcasting. It's for gaming, and I love the clickety clack that it all makes.
And if you hear me drinking, it's because I am. But don't worry, guys. It's vitamin water. It's not hard liquor.
Not yet.
You know I don't drink hard liquor. I barely drink anymore.
Okay, from what is this? NBC News. Her DNA results. Man, they're gonna bury it in this really long story.
And this is what bothers me, okay? Like, it should be at the top of the news. It should be on top of the article. Like, that's how you're supposed to write. Well, unless it's soft news, but when it comes to hard news, you should be putting the most important information at the top of the article, not putting it all the way at the bottom. Does it say?
I'm looking for it and looking back through the page because they basically talk about what Trump said, and I might go back and read that comment just because it's funny.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my goodness. Her DNA was first tested by the Boston Globe, which obtained news. I'm going to open that link. Maybe they're a little bit quicker about it than NBC is.
This is literally like...
According to... It's just
a bunch of...
Where is it? I mean, you can see my screen. I'm looking through
No,
it.
I'm looking for it. Like, it should be at the top. Like, that's how you're... Okay, I can't say this enough. That's how you're supposed to do it. Supposed to put it at the top.
I don't like news when they give me a story along with it. I don't care. If you're going to do a report on Elizabeth Warren and what her DNA test was, that should be up there. Like you're saying, at the top. It should be one of the very first things.
All I want is for it to be at the top. I don't want to read a bunch of jargon.
And so far, all I'm finding is jargon. So I'm probably going to leave this site and go look elsewhere since they just don't seem to want to talk about it. I see her tweet remembering saying on June 5th to Trump that you'd give $1 million to charity of my choice if the DNA shows Native American ancestry. Here's the verdict. And she posts, it looks like it's a Boston Globe one. So actually, I'm going to go find the Boston Globe.
The real thing that's bothering me is that it's taken us, it's been like 2 minutes maybe. We still can't find how much Native American she is.
Yep. And now I got to get past there. She is 1/32. Thank you, Boston Globe.
Oh, so wait, hang on. I think she and I have the same percentage.
Is that what it is? Same percentage?
I think so, because I think Dad's 1/16 Comanche. So that would, we're like the same. We're like sisters. Wow. I'm excited.
Oh, but the generational range based on the ancestor that reported identified suggests she's between 1/64th and 1024th Native American.
Oh, no.
So if we split her into 1,024 parts.
Oh my gosh.
One of them.
Oh my gosh. So she's okay. Never mind. I take all those things back. We're not as alike as I thought we were. That's
if
unfortunate.
O.C. Sarah Smith were fully Native American, that would make Warren up to 1/32nd Native. Okay, so that she's not 1/32nd. Let's clarify.
Okay, so
she's between 1/64th and 1,024th Native American.
Okay, I wouldn't even count
and she wrote free tuition on that. No, and the other part of it is that because I went looking up to see if there was any way that I could find out what tribe that I came from. And really difficult to do. If I ever wanted to claim it, I have to have actual Native American culture and practices and a lineage, and my family doesn't have that. They won't accept genetic testing from what I've read.
Yes, that's what, because Dad wanted to claim it too for college, but his grandmother was supposed to apparently sign to a database or something like that, and she never did. Mm-hmm. So my dad cannot.
I'd love to just find out what tribe that has a part of. I'm past the point of college. I highly doubt that I'm going to go back, and it's just such a wreck at this point that even if I did want something to go back for, I'd have to be super choosy over where I went and what I was going for.
Yeah. Well, that was a rabbit trail.
It was a bit of a rabbit trail, but we can jump on. Last week we talked about the split reins. With the horses,
Connor, they're called whips.
You're right.
They're called whips.
They are.
Get it
whips.
right. Get it right.
Well, this is kind of fun. So, New York Times reports on September 24th that Biden condemns the Border Patrol treatment of the Haitian migrants, and as the expulsions continue. And just to grab a little bit of what he said here, he said, Biden says, it's outrageous. I promise you, these people will pay. There will be an investigation underway now, and there will be consequences. There will be consequences.
I have a question.
What's that?
Where is this passion for Afghanistan? I want.
We don't talk about Afghanistan.
I want that statement to be about his own actions in Afghanistan. I am just saying the hypocrisy. Oh, okay, continue.
And then Jen Psaki comes in to add that the president was not prejudging the outcome of the investigation.
What? That sounds like prejudging to me, though.
Yeah.
Am I just crazy? I'm being serious. That sounds like prejudging to me. Yeah.
There will be an investigation. It's underway now, and there will be consequences. Okay, Mr. Biden. Well, the problem here is that it didn't happen. And this article, like I said, this was on the 24th. Daily Caller also reported on the 24th, his exact words, same thing. And we come over to Fox News that reported on the 24th as well, that the photographer behind the viral images of the Border Patrol agents on horseback, I've never seen them whip anyone. And it wasn't just Fox News, in case you're worried about them. It was also Newsweek and Daily Caller. And the photographer himself, I found his Twitter feed. He posted an article from the Washington Post, which is not putting all of this in very good frame for the Border Patrol agents, but I did find it interesting that in there, a reporter from the El Paso Times, and this is from the Washington Post, quoting some stuff here, Martha Skowski, described another facet of the interaction, one that evoked an unpleasant historical comparison to white enslavers hunting down enslaved blacks. Essentially saying that as the Haitians tried to climb into the U.S. side of the river Sunday afternoon, the agent shouted, "Let's go, get out now, back to Mexico." The agent swung his whip menacingly, charging. This is that story framing that I don't like. It's menacingly.
I watched the video though, and
yeah, he didn't hit anybody.
No, he didn't do any. He didn't do any of this.
I saw people that were commenting on the video that were saying he clearly whipped him. I'm like, no, he didn't. The dude never flinched. If you got whipped, you would definitely react. And he was just twirling it, and they both just walked off in different directions. Continuing his description, the agent swung his whip menacingly, charging his horse towards the men in the river who were trying to return to an encampment under the international bridge in Del Rio after buying food and water in Ciudad Acuña, Mexico. One migrant fell as he tried to dodge. Others shielded their heads with their hands. And to continue the article, it was not clear to the observers what agents had in their hands. So they didn't know. They didn't know there was reins. They didn't know if they were whips. They didn't know what they were. Ratji, who's the photographer, also described it as a whip. Miroff speculated that, given how agents were generally outfitted, it may have been a riding crop or the horse's reins. He added that actually using something to whip migrants to prevent entry would not be authorized.
Mm-hmm.
Neither Skowski or Ratji described seeing anyone struck by the objects, though Ratji said he did see a migrant almost trampled. And you get into the further descriptions of this, and the reason that they were spinning those reins was to keep people away from the horses so that they didn't get trampled.
That sounds right to me.
You spook a horse, the horse might throw the rider off, it might trample the person in front, and everybody, including the horse, might end up injured.
Right. And go back to that article too. When it talked about one that evoked an unpleasant historical comparison to white enslavers hunting down enslaved blacks. And that's the key, okay? The claim is white enslavers hunting down enslaved blacks. If you were to make a true historical comparison, we would have white people from the U.S. going to Haiti to bring them into America.
Not just that, but to go bring the Haitians that were captured by their fellow tribesmen and sold.
Right. But
somebody had to catch them first.
Right.
And then the ship showed up and shipped them off.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Yeah.
All parties involved. Then.
Yeah. We also forget about that too in that horrible part of our history. But when they say that this is a comparison, historical comparison, this isn't even close to a historical comparison. I'm just going to be honest, and you can disagree with me, Connor, but we have people coming into the U.S. Into the U.S. Like, you don't see Border Patrol agents going to Haiti, trying to track them down to bring them here. They're coming here.
And we're pushing them out.
Yeah. And so you can make arguments of, they're coming here because of, the situation in Haiti, which that's another conversation. But we're talking specifically about this author's claim that this was an unpleasant historical comparison to white enslavers hunting down enslaved blacks. This isn't close.
No,
I don't think that this is close.
if you took the picture itself and you took away all the context, the emotional appeal of it would probably feel like a modern version of it. Except when you add all the context, it really doesn't match up.
That's the thing, though. People don't want it in context. Like, you showed me that Slate article where it basically, we ought to push facts aside for our feelings. Mm-hmm. This is a good example of that. This is a good example of not taking facts into consideration and instead taking a snapshot of one image. And I'm a photographer, right? Mm-hmm. I'm a photographer. And I know that if you get a picture 1 second off, that it can have a completely different look. I can make someone look so happy, but maybe in the moment they were actually just smiling for that quick second, and the rest of the time they were completely sullen. Like, I know how to do it. I know how to make it happen, and I know that a picture really is worth 1,000 words or 100 emotions. So I know how this kind of thing works, and you need more than one picture to really show what's going on. Yep. Yes, and you can really fake things. I know how to fake things too. And I don't think these photographers were faking anything, by the way.
No, in fact, from the photographer's feed, reposting articles saying, 400 years of settler colonialism, white supremacy, racist immigration policies, imperialism, and racial violence in a single photo. So he's reposting these type of things. So he's definitely seeing it in that way. Yet kudos to the photographer and his associates for coming out and being like, look, we don't like this. They're probably not big fans of Border Patrol agents because they're kicking them out right now. So maybe they're not fan of what their job is currently. But he did repost the article that did confirm, as one of the first ones actually, that was confirming that they never saw them get whipped. And I mean, the fact that he came out and was like, look, this didn't happen. And this was September 19th. Remember, Biden's comments came out on the 24th, 5 days later, which was also the same day that...
Are you sure like it came out 5 days later, or that's when the article was written?
Article was written September 20th. And then Biden's comments, at least the ones that were reported on the articles that are coming out, were the 24th.
Okay, hang on. Let me just look here. When did Biden make a statement?
September 24th, 11 a.m. Daily Caller reports that Joe Biden says they will pay. There will be consequences.
Yeah, no, you're right. It looks like it was about the 24th.
So the day that he comes out and he says that is also the day that Fox News Week, Daily Caller, all come out and say, hey, the photographer says they never actually whipped anybody. Mm-hmm. That didn't happen. And then we get over Daily Caller once again on the 27th, so 2 days now after Biden's comments. New York Times, who was the original one that wrote the article on that picture, corrects their claim that the Border Patrol used reins to whip Haitian migrants. And let's see if I can find their statement here. The images of agents on horseback chasing and in some cases using the reins of their horses to strike at running migrants came as Mr. Biden's administration moved to forcefully round up and deport more than 2,000 of the 15,000 migrants who gathered in a makeshift camp in Del Rio. I'm just going to grab this guy's snapshots of it because New York Times is behind their login wall and I don't have a login for them. And I don't really want one.
What? Why not?
But on the 24th, they basically came out and said, an earlier version of this article overstated what is known about the behavior of some Border Patrol agents on horseback. While the agents waved their reins while pushing migrants back into the Rio Grande, the Times has not seen conclusive evidence that migrants were struck with those reins.
Okay, that's an okay correction.
It's an okay one. It comes at the bottom of the page, which I think these corrections should be at the very top and highlighted. And this is just... Again, this is burying content.
And I want to say,
it's also hard to find that article now on Google.
Yeah, big tech. I don't really know how much they're gonna really want that to show up.
Yeah, Post Millennial also reported on it, so it's not just Daily Caller. And Gerald Beer was the one that posted the tweet about them changing it.
But this is my issue with this. If I'm looking at it right now with you. If I were to offer a correction, I'd be like, hey, we were wrong. They were not whipping migrants. They did not have whips. Mm-hmm. We were wrong about this. It kind of felt like they use I want to say I saw a double negative in there where they're kind of like being like, yeah, we have no exclusive evidence. So we're not sure is what they're saying. Like, we're not sure.
Yeah, they're not sure. The original claim was that in some cases, using the reins of their horses to strike at running migrants. And that's essentially the part that they're correcting right there.
Okay, so they're specifically correcting
images of Border Patrol agents on horseback waving their reins while pushing migrants back. That's what it's been changed to now.
Okay.
Waving reins, not striking migrants.
So they never. So in these at least they never say whipping. That is if that's not the language they use, then I'll take back my comment.
Yeah, they say striking in the original article. Striking at running migrants with the reins of the horses, which they are reins, they're a type of reins, and then they changed it to waving their reins while pushing migrants back. And their correction is specifying that they did wave their reins and that they haven't seen conclusive evidence that anybody was struck.
Okay, I think that's actually fair, given seeing the bit of the article that they had versus what they have now. I'm going to take back what I said. I actually think it's a fine enough correction for me. Because if they had said whipping and then they had put this out there, I would have been like, that's not good enough.
Yeah.
But given the article that they put out, I'll take back what I said. I think that's fair.
I think that's fair. And we mentioned a little bit last week. I mean, there's the full story there so far as this is developed. Is photograph comes out, everybody freaks out. Out of context photo that they're whipping migrants. Turns out even the president missed the memo.
I feel like Biden probably misses a lot of memos.
Say that. That's shocking.
Yeah, I was going to say.
But it had already been stated several days earlier that the photographer had not seen anybody whipped. Biden says they're going to pay. Psaki tries to correct him that he wasn't prejudging the situation.
She always tries to help Biden out.
Look, she's got one of the most difficult jobs in the country.
I mean, I thought
I wouldn't say she does a good job at it, but she has one of the most difficult jobs in the country, which is trying to make sense or make up for the things that Biden says.
I mean, McEnany had to do some similar stuff with Trump as well.
That
was a thing. That was a thing.
It was a different type of fixing what he said or explaining what he said or circling back to whatever he might have said, and then what we have now, which is ramblings,
like non-words, incoherent sentences.
True on the shamata pressure.
Yeah. Yes, I ever like I don't even know what he said.
It sounded like it was going to be true international something, and then it switched to depression, and I couldn't figure out. I listened to the clip so many times, and I could
and you were trying to decipher.
It
Biden.
seemed like 2, maybe 3 different thoughts just kind of merged together, and it's like at first I kind of understood the direction he was going, and then I couldn't figure it out. And I figured out the popcorn stuff that he was talking about, or corn pop. Talking about corn pop is a bad dude. I went back to that, and that's like childhood stories from him, basically, about a like local thug or gang, which they were probably like in high school at that point, and so it's like I don't know how much of a gang this guy it really is versus he's a bully or a jerk, and they'd go around and pick on people. And younger Biden essentially, which he does seem like he's a hot-headed individual when he was younger, so I tend to believe him on this, is that he pretty much challenged the guy to a fight, and they ended up talking it out. So
I just can't. I don't feel like I can trust really anything that Biden says at this point. Like I genuinely
you don't want to trust that the kids love to rub his hairy legs in the pool and watch this blonde hair go back up.
I need to put a warning before you said that. That's too much for me. He's just creepy. And again, I just want to reiterate, I don't hate Joe Biden. I just think that he's mentally ill. I also think he's creepy. Like if you look
mentally ill or just mentally declining, cognitive functions going down. It reminds me a lot of when my grandpa started going downhill, and that's what makes me sad. Even though I don't like him, I also don't hate him, like you said. And it's sad to me to watch his cognitive decline go down while he's just thrusted into this by his wife, any other family that he has that's working with him, and anybody else in the White House that's on his team that's like, yeah, you're gonna do this. It's just sad. Like, as I watched my grandpa go downhill, I can't imagine tossing him and be like, all right, you're going to be president.
It's like, what? Third time's the charm. Wait, how many times did he try? How many times did he try for president? I thought this was his third time. It's his third time?
Second or third.
Yeah.
I'm definitely sure it was his second. I'm not so sure if it was his third.
Yeah, because I know
unless he tried when he was younger and then didn't try again for a while.
I want to say he tried a couple of times, but I could be wrong on that.
Well, he's been in it for
about 40.
No,
really?
Coming up on 50 years.
Really?
I think it was 47, 48 years.
Oh wow, yeah. So he's been at it for a while. But sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, you're good. Those reigns, essentially. I was like, oh, I'm curious what other reigns are out there.
Oh, I was talking about your grandfather because that felt insensitive of me to interrupt you talking about your grandfather. My grandfather's going downhill. Me. How many times did Biden run for president?
No, I mean just him going mentally downhill and just being able to tell that he couldn't remember things, he couldn't hold a conversation, his head wasn't as clear as it was before. Like we used to play poker all the time, and pretty soon like he wasn't the dexterity for handling the cards and figuring out what type of matches or runs or flushes he was looking for just went downhill. And
just so sad.
He didn't play cards with us anymore. Mm-hmm. And that was because he didn't take care of his health. That was one of the few things that we were able to do with him and have a lot of fun with.
Yeah.
And then, he had much less of a restraint on his temper, and he was just more sharp with his words, to the point that it would frustrate my mom a lot, and it was creating a lot of friction in the household. And it's like, this is not the grandpa that I grew up with. He wasn't like this. And to watch another elderly gentleman, even though I don't like him, it's just I would venture out to say that it seems pretty inhumane to have him I don't know what drugs they're putting him on to keep him going, but it's clear that he's not always there. Sometimes he comes out strong, but he can't. He
loses steam pretty fast.
Yeah, he doesn't have the stamina for it.
Yeah,
he doesn't have the stamina for it, and where he might, I would not be surprised if this is shaving years off his life.
I mean, stress has a big impact on your life, and he's already going downhill. And you're talking about kind of the sharpness of words and just kind of your grandfather kind of going downhill in regards to his language. I know there's some people that have been like, you're making fun of him because he has a stutter and all this stuff, like he's disabled. How could you say such horrible things? And well, I'm not trying to say anything horrible about him. First off, but this isn't a stutter that he's had, his entire life, right? Like I've actually watched, I was watching his, I think it was a hearing for Clarence Thomas, when he was going to become one of the judges for the Supreme Court. And I listened to Biden talk. Coherent, completely coherent. He could put a sentence together. You might not agree with what he said. I didn't agree with what he said, but he was definitely coherent, and I could understand him perfectly fine, compared to now, where I can barely understand him, and this isn't necessarily something he's struggled with, as far as I can tell. This is not something he has struggled with his entire life. It seems like it is a direct result of his mental decline. And that's really unfortunate. That's really unfortunate to watch. Not only is it just bad for his personal life in general, but it's also horrible for the country, because then, okay, who's going to take over once Biden goes downhill? Like, he is going to go downhill. Like, if you think he's not at this point, I don't really know what to tell you, because all the evidence is there that he's declining pretty fast, even from 2020, from late 2020.
Yeah, definitely.
He's declined more since then. So it's coming faster and faster, in my opinion. So I don't know what's going to happen once I just don't think he's going to make it 4 years, is what I'm trying to say. I don't think he's going to make it. And who's going to take his place?
No, and unfortunately, I find myself in a position where I'm like, yeah, I kind of hope he makes it 4 years, because our next up is Kamala Harris.
Don't worry, the Democrats are hoping for that too.
And then people are like, well, then maybe, we can get her removed. I'm like, well, if you let's say Joe Biden, fails a cognitive test, and so he's removed from office, and then we get Kamala, and then for some reason you're able to remove her from office for whatever reason. Well, then you get Nancy Pelosi.
I heard she was going to step down too at some point soon.
I mean, she's getting older as well, but I think it's funny.
She hasn't stopped with the facelifts though.
Never stop with the facelifts, Jordan.
Well, this is my third one.
Keep lifting them higher and higher.
That's what I'm trying to do. I want to look more surprised as the time goes on. Like, the more surprising things happen, the more I want to constantly look surprised in my face.
You know how awful your face would look like at your funeral?
Well, I'd have a close casting, Connor. Don't be ridiculous. I'm not doing this for my death. I'm doing it for my life. That's what the facelift is for. But this has been a good conversation. And one thing I want to say, kind of before we wrap up, like, there's just, if you've watched the mainstream media, like, make a big deal out of the Border Patrol whipping, or the swinging of the reins, I think is a fine enough term. I think that's what some of them were doing. And look at the way the Democrats have covered the Afghanistan collapse. They're talking about this non-issue of these Border Patrol agents having reins as if it is the end of the world. Yet they cover Afghanistan like is a far less reason to be worried.
Yep.
And that should bother us. That should tell us about the priorities of our media that are more focused on trying to create racism than actually worrying about Americans that are stuck in Afghanistan and about the horrible policy decisions. And by the way, not just the horrible policy decisions of Afghanistan, but what that's going to mean for other countries like Russia and China. Because don't think the Taliban isn't talking to them, because they are, and China's going to jump.
Yeah, because in case people are short on their geography, those two countries are nearby.
Yep.
Very nearby.
So these are things to think about when you think about where you should put your time and energy. Obviously, we spent 20-30 minutes talking about it, but all to make a point. There are some things that are non-issues that are made into issues by the media. They are trying, in my opinion, I think they are trying to get across a certain narrative. And I think with this one, for certain, it is some kind of race narrative that they're trying to bring forth. Which is odd, because they say that America is systemically racist, yet they're upset that we're not. They're making a claim that because we don't want Haitians in the U.S.
Which
that makes us
there's
racist.
60,000 more that are lined up in one group that are on their way here now.
Yeah, I don't think I said that 100% correctly. I'm trying to find a better way of putting it. No, I think I said that correctly.
Okay.
Maybe. We'll see. I'll correct myself next time.
You'll hear itself when you listen to the entire segment.
I don't listen to myself on these because I sound like I'm 12 years old, so I can't do it. I try for a little bit, but
I'll try to play with their voices a little bit, make them sound a little bit.
Make me sound a little bit more like deep and raspy.
Okay.
Like this.
I'm gonna run through it real quick. People can look this up for themselves. But as far as different horse reins go, we have barrel reins, split reins, decorated reins, paracord and nylon.
Oh.
And then in English writing, you have rubber reins, laced reins, double reins, and smooth reins. And also reins with stoppers. And they all have different uses. So do some quick research, see what they're all about, where they're used, what they're used for. And it just goes to show you that the outrage movement that the media really goes, which is really for clickbaiting.
Yeah.
It's clickbaiting, getting everybody to just freak out as much as possible on as little evidence as possible, and then we find out down the road that it's incorrect, and they can just kind of usher in a minor quiet under the desk.
Put that on a t-shirt. Wow, Connor, that was great.
More or less. And you know what? These are the articles that we'll continue to look at and follow as we go, and we got to keep our own emotions in check and not freak out when we see something. Let a story play out and find out what the additional facts and investigations are as we continue on Resident Skeptics.
I think that's a good note to end it on.
I think so as well.
All right. See you guys next time.
Thanks for joining us.